and explain this thing that I really don't like. I like it, but I don't like the way it's normally explained. So I came up with these 7 questions that are based strongly upon our experiences in all of these different basins. So the point of the 7 questions is to say, if you're contemplating implementing integrated water resource management in a basin, you need to work through these questions and find ways of taking action. You have to work through and find answers to find what are the actions that you need to take in order to address these questions. And those actions are the basis for putting together the kinds of multi-stranded strategies that relate to ecology, that relate to financing, that relate to managing water risks, that relate to governance and institutions, that relate to capacity building, that we found is the strands that you need to pull together into a coherent approach for implementation. So we wanted to base today's session, therefore, on taking the kind of fictional basin that Alejandro introduced, and that we'll hear more about the story of this fictional basin, the Tacon Basin, in just a minute. Take these 7 questions and work through them together. Bring into that some discussion of our experiences from Central America and Oceania and so on, and say, for this fictional basin, what should we be doing about these 7 questions? And we'll work through a little exercise of building up a visual roadmap for how you would do implementation to address these 7 issues in the Tacon Basin. So the 7 questions are, first, before you can tackle implementation, you need to get on top of what is the problem. And we're going to identify what is the problem, probably it'll take us about, I'll have a discussion will take 10 or 15 minutes. But in these projects, the Water Nationalistic projects, Rocio, for example, working out the problems, the real problems that needed to be tackled, not just about water, but about development and development priorities, and as well as conservation. In the case of the Tacana watershed, probably took you, Rocio, 18 months, 2 years, to really get at what are the real problems.
18 months.
18 months. We have other basins in northern Nigeria, the Komati-Yobe. If you looked at that project after 2 years as a donor, you would have said, stop, because they're getting nowhere. But it's because they were spending, and they had fortunately the space to spend quite a bit of time with stakeholders, working through what's the real problems here that we need to try and tackle. And then that project went on and did transformative things in Nigeria. Okay, so the second question, and of course this is the crux of the ecosystem approach, is to say, what are the ecosystem services that you need to solve the problem you're after? And also in the context of water resources, what other actions are needed, what technologies, what infrastructure need to be working alongside those ecosystem services. So what ecosystem services do you need to solve the problems? The other point of that question is, too often that question doesn't get asked. The answer to the problem of water scarcity in a basin is build another dam. But if you ask this question, you might come up with a different set of options. Then number 3, okay, therefore what actions do we need to be taking? What actions do different stakeholders need to be taking? And once we start thinking about the actions that we can take to address these problems, well, what institutions are needed? What institutional setup will be effective in getting that action going? And then going to the 5th question, who's going to take the action? So those institutions need to be operating so that they empower the right stakeholders to take what actions they're supposed to be doing. Which then implies question 6, well, if people are going to be empowered to do things, they need to have new capacities. So what knowledge and capacities do we need to get into the system to get implementation moving? And then the 7th, how do you pay for this? How do you pay for this? And there's, of course, a whole variety of means of doing that. But incentives and sustainable financing models to get the investment needed to often sometimes restore a basin or get good management into play. So those are the 7 questions that we want to base our discussions about the Takong Basin around, and base our thinking through about how you build an implementation model that pulls together the different strands that those questions force you to deal with. Any questions about the questions? Because the next thing we'll do is we'll look at the Takong Basin. We'll start to see what the problems are that we're going to have to try and solve. Yeah? The Takong?
Yes.
Now we'll bring the questions back up.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have a pointer?
Yeah, the pointer on that.
So, good afternoon, everybody. So, before starting the take-home or Takong, there's still some debate on what is the properly correct pronunciation from this very special place. I would like you to picture yourself getting yourself into the limousine airport, going to the Jeju airport, taking a flight back. Destination is going to be Takong Basin, which, as you will see, it's really not clear how far away is it from here. But it's a very interesting place where a lot of dynamics are happening. So let me take you through where we're gonna be heading towards today. So this is the basin. Basically, it's around 125,000 square kilometers, and it's framed within the Tarambana mountain range up on the north, and down on the south it's the Fatumnes Sea. Whereas on the west side of the basin, you will find what they refer to as the Menhir Desert, and to the east, basically, you have a series of swamps and forests. The Tarambana mountains give birth, you would say, to 3 different rivers. Mainly, the biggest one, which also gives the name to the basin, it's the Takong River Basin, but also to the left, the Mumbara River, and also here to the right of the river, the Tarambana. Here, most to the northeast side of the map, you can see the biggest tributary of the Takong River Basin, which is the Sambara River, which has a course of around 500 kilometers. So next. Okay, so the basin is basically occupied by 2 countries. One of them is Confundesia, and the other one is called Aquinonia. The borders are between the river were established by the Alchemy Pact. So around 60% of the territory is Confundesia, whereas the other one, the 40%, corresponds to Aquinonia. Confundesia, the border runs down from the midpoint of the Tarambana River up north. Then it goes around the northern shore of the Lake Quimeras, and then through a segment of the shrouded forest, then onto the Sambara River, and then down, all the way down, all the way onto where it meets the Takong River. Then it crosses the Takong and runs along the eastern side of the Tarpon Canal, all the way down to the Astonishment Bay. Talking purely about Confundesia, it has a population of 14,500,000 inhabitants, and it has an area of approximately 200,000 square kilometers. Whereas Aquinonia, the latest reports, they say it has around 9,500,000 inhabitants within an area of approximately 120,000 square kilometers. Confundencia is a developing country and it has a diversified economy based on agriculture, livestock, fishing and tourism, whereas Aquinonia relates mostly on raw materials and tourism as well. Okay, so Confundesia's biodiversity. Confundesia's geography and climate. So approximately 70% of the Confundesian territory is flat, as you can see from the map, right? So half of it, and the other percentage is basically the semi-arid desert or some of the wetlands. The principal features are the Quimeras Lake in the center of the basin, which is internationally recognized because of its size and also because of its scenic beauty, but also the shrouded forest, which facilitates the regulation of water in the basin and also ensures protection against landslides for the communities living up north from the lake. And the third point here is the Menhir Desert, which is basically an arid region in the western part of the country. Regarding specifically about the biodiversity of the country, about Confundesia, it has a wide range of ecosystems that go from mountainous up in the north, as we have seen, all the way down to sea coasts, cloud forest, alluvial plains, and also semi-arid areas. Talking specifically about the Quimeras Lake, there's a variety of aquatic species, in particularly the ghost sharks, which they obviously were a sea species, but somehow, I don't know, I'm not sure because I'm a lawyer, not a plant physiologist, they made it all the way down to the lake. Okay, aside from that, we have the shrouded forest, at least the last vestiges of an ecosystem that it's endangered by land fragmentation, also by logging and by mining activities. And now, up to date, most of the region has been declared a biosphere reserve. Confundesia has also established a national park in the most densely parts of the forest, and they are aiming to the protection of the endangered jaguar. So about the autonomous regions and cities, well, Confundesia, first of all, I should say that it's a constitutional monarchy and its authority is mainly decentralized. But apart from that, it has 5 established regions. So the first one on the center is Harpooners. Then near Fat Duplessis you would find Metis. Then to the right you would find where is it? No, to the north you would find Metis. Sorry. Then Upper Mambara, Quimeras, and Tarambana. All of them, they are traditional indigenous names. You might as well know that. Regarding the cities, sorry, the first one is Confluence, which is the capital and has about 2 million inhabitants. It's the kingdom's largest city as well. It's a strategic point due to its location at the confluence of 2 of the main rivers of the whole basin, the Teikon and the Mumbara. And it's also through this city that people's goods and services arrive and depart from the kingdom. Secondly, you would have Harpooners, which has it's of particular relevance for the fishing industry. Also, it's important to mention Estambay, which has a population of around 1 million people, and it's the second largest city in the country. It has a relatively strategic importance due to its location at the center of Astonishment Bay, which is basically the gateway to the Tarpon Canal. Fourthly, you would have the citadel of Metadis, which is located in the desert, in the Menhir Desert, which is also the driest region of the country. And finally, you would have Saline, which is of relatively significance. It's relatively significant because it's also at the border between the 2 countries. Regarding the agriculture and industry of the country, well, I have already mentioned that it's a developing country and that it has a diversified economy based on farming, livestock production, as well as fishing and tourism. It is also the country with the biggest purchasing power in the region. And yeah, its principal activities are farming and livestock production, mainly in the regions of Upper Mambara, Metis, and Quimera. The main crops include cotton, wheat, potatoes, tobacco, sugarcane, which is a crop that is being developed lately for the use of the incipient but growing biofuel industry. Also, since 10 years, Confundesia has inaugurated the Tarpon Canal, which is a direct aquatic route between the Fatima Sea and the Tacon River, and it's essential for the kingdom's economy. Mostly the country's energy is hydroelectric, and it's generated by the Kuri Dam, which is in the upper part of the Tacon. However, the energy sector has felt some pressure due to the demand, and then they are looking for alternative sources. One of the planned ideas is to build a second dam in the upper Mumbar, which is called the Edara project. But also there has been a recently new debate in the country about the possibilities of introducing nuclear. Finally, there's a mining sector in Confundesia which is not highly developed, but in recent years the country seems to be opening the doors to new mining companies. Finally, regarding the tourism in the country, we have to mention that it has grown sustainably during the last 15 years, especially to so beautiful destinations like the Chimeric Lake or the Charlotte Forest. In the Chimera Lake, mainly the activities are sailing and also sports fishing. You have to remember that it's quite big and that it has sharks there. And in the Charlotte Forest, mainly the main activities are hiking around the Purple Eagle National Park and also around the Mount Kilimanjaro. So that's it for Confundesia. I hope that that was somehow clear, the country picture. But what about Aquinonia, which is, if you go to the region, I would also suggest you go to this beautiful country. So Aquinonia, it's also basically flat country, except for the part in the Tarambana Mountains in the north, in the department of Upper Zambara. The geographical features are pretty. You could say that some of them are shared with Confundesia. Basically, the Charlotte Forest, which, as we have seen, it has a great diversity of flora and fauna. But also, you have the Aronis Swamp, which is a giant wetland registered as a Ramsar site. Apparently, it was just declared as such last year. And apparently, you also will find the Seals Peninsula, the Tilapi Archipelago, and the Salesian coast. Down south, the four principal islands of the Tilapi Archipelago are Dusk Island, Harbor Bend Island, Daybreak, and Windy Island. There is an ethnic group here also, which is called the Tilapis, and with the Tilapis, they have traditions that include fishing and collecting of mollusks. So the cities, the main city and capital of Aquinonia, it's Palmyra, which is a city that has a population of 1.5 million people, and it's also the country's principal economic center. You also have Striropolis, which is the second most important city in the country, which has modernized and enlarged port connections to Alchemy, Palmyra, and the archipelago. Third city in importance is Alchemy, which has a population of around 250,000 people, and it's close to the international boundary, to the Papyrus Dam, and to the agricultural and livestock areas of Paladanis. And finally, you have Etruria, which is of particular importance because of the tourist industry that has recently developed in the region. What about the agriculture and industry of Aquinonia? Well, basically they are depending on the production of raw materials and on tourism. So regarding the agriculture activities, they are planting oilseed, tobacco, fruit, and ornamental plants. Many farmers have also switched lately to soybean due to basically world market demands, and this would compromise the competitiveness. Some people say that would compromise competitiveness of the sector within the medium and long term because of lack of diversification of the agricultural products. But that's a study that is being contested actually. Regarding timbering, it's concentrated in the upper Zambara, and over the last 10 years, the government has adopted some types of incentives to establishment of forest plantations to protect the shrouded forests. Some environmentalists actually believe that this has incentivized the growing of high-yield species, but also increased the water consumption, which will in turn led to volumes of water being extracted from the upper Zambara, and which at the end will have some negative effects on the wetlands. Regarding primary sources of energy, it's the Papyrus Dam on the lower part of the Taekong, which provides approximately 50% of the country's energy needs. And they are talking right now of a second part of the dam project, which is called Papyrus Dam 2. Regarding mining, which is also part of the economical activities developed in the country, mining plays an important role. So what they are extracting here is basically silver, copper, gold, and some other deposits